Hello, everybody. I've gotten so many comments and emails and DMs recently, and I really appreciate it. And I wanted to come on to talk about a question I've received a lot recently, which is about whether or not I recommend one specific teacher training school. So this is going to be a little bit different because I'm not going to say the name of the school. That's because I want to take care of myself. But I'm going to give you some homework, some tools that you can use, whether that's for this organization or another organization, to see if I would recommend them. Okay, does that sound good? So let's dive in. I'm going to tell you about my general observations about this organization before I had anything to do with them or had ever interacted with them, as well as a bit about my personal experience with them. Cool. So I first became aware of this organization a few years ago. They were coming onto the scene because they had an online teacher training program, which was quite different compared to what other people were offering. And when I kind of explored their website, I had some questions that seemed a little bit contradictory to what I'd initially heard. So I heard about them from a teacher who is very much known for Pilates being inclusive, teaching all bodies, making sure that they were teaching things that were backed by science. So these are values that are very, very important to me. So I was psyched to hear about a school that seemed to be equally dedicated to that. But when I went to their website initially, some things just didn't start adding up to me. So the first thing I want you to take a note of is if you go to a website that says a percentage of graduates who have successfully gotten jobs after, in Pilates specifically, for me, that is a red flag. So if they're saying, 90% or 95 or 70% of our graduates go on to get teaching jobs within their first 3 months, to me, that is a red flag. It was before March 2020. If it's still listed in 2022, even more so. Let me explain why. So I live in a country where we do have a vocational education system. So it's very possible to go through a training in the country I live in for certain professions where you are fed into the workforce. So basically companies can go and say, we need this many engineers, or we need this many hairstylists, all of these things. So that way students have a clear understanding when they sign up for a degree, what their likelihoods are of finding a job afterwards, and their apprenticeships are all set up. And these are things I've talked about in other videos about getting your hours. In Pilates, that system does not exist globally. So I can't speak to specific countries, but I know that for most of the countries in Europe, that doesn't exist. In North America, I've never heard of that existing, where you sign up for teacher training and the spaces are limited because the studios know they only need so many new teachers. So if you're marketing that on a global scale, there's no way you can make that kind of a guarantee, and it's not very transparent about what those kinds of jobs actually are. Are people truly earning money? Is it a fair wage? Is it a living wage? There's a lot of open-ended questions. So that's the first thing I want you to look for on any website. Are they telling you some kind of guarantee of what their hiring is? I forgot to add one other thing there. The other thing I wanted to say is in 2022, there are so many Pilates teachers who have needed to stop teaching and who have no longer been able to teach because of how unstable the world is. So if an institution is saying that to you now, for me, that's highly, highly suspicious. It's a very good sales technique though, but that does not guarantee a positive outcome for you. Okay, so that's the first thing. You're going to look out for those kind of guarantees. The second thing I want you to look at is their testimonials. So the organization that I've been asked about, one thing I noticed was they had testimonials, like many websites do, of people who seem to be students talking about how great the program is. But what I then learned is that the people that were being quoted actually work for that organization. For me, that is also a red flag. So that's something else I want you to list down is, are the testimonials of students, excuse me, are those people in any way related to that organization? I've got something in my throat. I try to film these in one go. That's also something I would not recommend because I don't think it is ethical in terms of their marketing strategy. So let me explain why. There is a difference between a student who goes through and has a decent experience in any kind of educational program, a student who goes through didn't have a decent experience. You're not going to get a testimonial from them. And an individual who maybe went through a program as a student but is now being paid to work for that organization. That person is going to have had an unusually positive experience, most likely. Yes, because they want to go back and work for them, or they've been given the opportunity, or maybe they went into that program knowing they were going to be hired. I am not speculating here. I do not know, but these are the things that kind of go through my brain when I see testimonials made to look like they were from students, but people who eventually ended up being on the staff of those organizations. So that's something else you can do, and this is true of any teacher training program, to go look up those people who are listed in testimonials to find out where are they working, what are they doing, are they still working in Pilates? I've seen testimonials from people where it sounded like things worked out really great, and then I found them on LinkedIn, and it turns out they actually taught for 2 years, and then they went back to traditional office work. So these are things to definitely keep in mind. So that's the second thing. Look at who are the people in testimonials and where did they end up after their teacher training. The third thing, I don't know if this has changed. My experience when I did reach out to learn more about their programs, because I was genuinely interested in taking them, was that there was no follow-up when I went through that whole onboarding process. And so the discovery call, my only options were in the middle of the night. So it didn't seem as student-centric as I was initially led to believe from the marketing documents. So that's something else, is kind of look out for me. Are these processes in place to automate and potentially sell things via a newsletter? Or are there processes in place that maybe are not perfect, but it seems like the people you are talking to are just genuinely trying to run a business and figure out if you're the right fit or not. The last thing that I will say about this organization is that as part of their marketing and outreach, they also had a podcast. This is tricky because I can't give you any specific homework per se to do for this. But one thing I want you to keep in mind is that if you have a marketing podcast, you might have very specific reasons for wanting things to be said. So this organization talks a lot about their values and how much they value research and correcting things when they're wrong, this, that, and the other, but at the same time, how it's very authentic Pilates. So I personally was quite shocked when I heard them saying on a podcast that Joseph Pilates invented the first home fitness routine, very adamantly, when that is simply not factually true. And if they researched even a little bit about the method, the man, there would be no way that anyone could say that. And that for me was very concerning, to have their co-host be so adamant that this was the truth when it's simply not. And it's not something we need to argue about. It's not any kind of heated debate. It's just factually incorrect. So to say that they are pro-research and then to have such a massive fumble also seems suspicious to me. So that one, less homework for you, but more to be aware of in terms of marketing tone and voice and how that might influence your decision. This is the last thing I want to kind of say, which is about my personal experience with them as an organization compared to other organizations. So you know from my other videos, I've said that you can go to a big school and you could have a fantastic experience, you could have an okay one, or you could have a terrible experience. It depends on the instructor you get. One of the reasons why I definitely would not recommend this organization is because of how they present themselves. So this is, get that pen out again. I want you to be aware and note down, how is this organization trying to present itself? Are they presenting themselves as very mission driven? Are they presenting themselves as just a Pilates school? Are they presenting themselves as being a part of a larger social cause or movement? Take note of that, what it is you're observing, what are you noticing, how are they trying to differentiate themselves? And then I want you to look for what is it that they're doing to actually act on that, and does that organization represent those things in terms of their staff? Yeah. Because this was a real kicker for me in my interactions with this organization. So full transparency, again, without the names, this school actually did reach out to me to see if I would be interested in applying for a teacher training position about a year ago. They had found me via my channel, and they said they thought it was really interesting what I was saying, so I was invited in for a call, and at the end of the call, they said, would you be interested in applying? While I did have my doubts, I was very excited about the opportunity to have a salaried position, to be able to work remotely. It was all really exciting, and I thought, well, they might not be perfect, but maybe they were some rookie mistakes as they built this organization, and I would like to be part of a community that is dedicated to change. I was then asked to come in for an initial interview, which I was told would be a values interview. And this is what's really important here. From a diversity, equity, inclusion perspective and an HR perspective, we know statistically that hiring based off of a values fit or a cultural fit leads to discrimination. And I'm saying this fully aware of all of my privileges, but we can still know that it is not an equitable hiring practice, because it means that organizations can be looking for people who only present in ways similar to their own. You are not being assessed based off of your skill level or those other qualifications. So I was a little uneasy when I was told there would be a values fit, but knowing the issues within the Pilates industry, I wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt that they were looking for candidates who were not going to be saying the way Joseph Pilates taught is the only way I will teach, even if we've now learned, thanks to science, that there are things we need to be tweaking, things that were incorrect, things that we can adjust to be better. So I took it in good faith that was what the interview would be about. Instead, I was asked about things like, what are my self-care techniques? What do I think about science and research? I explained that I was doing my graduate studies, hopefully on Pilates. So I was very dedicated to research in the Pilates field. I was asked about radical candor, which I had learned from a friend of mine in preparation for the interview, is a leadership technique about being radically honest and allowing people to express all of their emotions in the range of emotions to then improve organizations. And with that, I decided to tell them about some of my less than positive experiences in the Pilates industry, because I felt like it shaped who I am as a teacher, and it was also relevant to the conversation in my potential employment by this organization. So it felt like this was a very progressive, safe, forward-thinking organization. What happened next proved to me that it was not. Because instead of any follow-up questions or ask for clarifications about any of those things, I simply received an email a few weeks later telling me I was not a values fit. There was no discussion of my qualifications or lack thereof, simply I wasn't a fit. To this day, I do not know why. I did attempt to follow back up with the organization to give them my feedback about how that felt for me and to try to have a clear understanding of what had happened, because I didn't know if they had spoken to someone, maybe the person I was referencing in my interview, about me. and that I hadn't had the opportunity to tell my side because I hadn't gone into terrible detail. And for me, that's the point where I drew the line of, I do not recognize this as a recommendable organization or an organization that is truly willing to do better. Because that's the thing. Right now in the Pilates community, there are larger schools who I think, can recognize as maybe not being the most modern, not having been traditionally equitable, and they've had some major blunders. But what I have seen to their credit is a willingness to listen and learn. There have been some other Pilates creators and teachers who have called out these organizations, and these organizations have responded and changed their behavior. For me, I go into recommendations for teacher training thinking about what is your psychological safety, really. And I personally feel it is much easier for people to feel guarded, protected, and taken care of if they walk into a situation knowing it might not be great, but this is what I need to do in order to get where I want to go, versus walking into a situation feeling like this is going to be fabulous and I'm meeting like-minded people and this is going to help me really build this career and I'm going to get a job and all of this, and potentially being gaslit. I think that can be really, really crushing for people, particularly in educational settings and when you're making such a large financial and time investment. So that's something else I want you to pay attention to, whether it's about this organization I am thinking about or any other organization. How is it that they're trying to present themselves? What are the values they're trying to present and their reason for existing? And do the actions of that organization reflect that in terms of their staff, their initiatives, their ways of operating, and everything that comes with it? So those are kind of my main thoughts. I do hope that you take those points to try to figure out if a teacher training program works for you. If you can figure out what program I'm talking about, fantastic, cool. Because my thing is I really don't want people to go through the journey that I went through and many of my peers went through, because it's simply not fun. And it can be incredibly discouraging, not just in terms of Pilates, but in a much larger picture. And I don't want you to do that. I don't want you to have to deal with that. I have received some really lovely emails asking more about equipment and about like the time commitment for Pilates. So I'm going to be making more videos about that stuff soon. But just know I do recognize these are big decisions. It's a lot of time, it's a lot of money, and I hear how serious it is, and sometimes it's hard when people make you feel like, oh, it's just going to be fun, and then you question yourself, and yeah, it is a big deal. So that's what I wanted to say. Use those notes, do go through and do it. It's worth it. It really is. And that's it for today. Have a good one.